Fantastic there. Well, welcome Mark Norton from the Cornish Premier Pasties, and it's great for you to be here today. And please just tell me all about yourself, what you do and how long you've been doing this for.
Okay, moved to Cornwall because I'm Cornish wife. We wanted to have our children in Cornwall in 1993. I set up a publishing business. We published guidebooks and walks books, and that was successful. Prior to that, I'd had a big FTSE 100 type career in food retailing. To cut a long story short, I got into working for the DTI as a business advisor. So I had experiences running my own small company and also big companies. Working for the DTI and then a firm of chartered accountants for about 10 years. I eventually decided to go out on my own. And I bought a bakery business called Prima Bakeries Limited. Prima Bakeries is the sister company to Cornish Premier that I'm sitting in today. He actually is the 100% owner of the shares of Cornish Premier. So Prima Bakeries Limited, based in Redruth, and we purchased that business 12 years ago. We've grown turnover by a factor of 9. We've gone from 19 staff to 90.
Wow.
Prima became effectively the largest or fastest growing wholesale bakery business in Cornwall, with vans distributing bakery products all the way down to Land's End each day up to East Cornwall. We started to reach capacity in Prima. When I first bought Prima 12 years ago, they made 500 pasties a week, Cornish pasties. And this has become a key focus of our business. This week we will have made 38,000. So it gives you a scale of the growth in particular on pasties in that company. Prima Bakeries still makes a lot of other non-pasty items, bakery items such as bread rolls, bread and cake. And so on the pasty side of things, we started to reach capacity and started to look around. There was a company that I knew, Cornish Premier Pasties Limited, who I'd known the directors for some time. We'd worked together in bits and bobs, and they decided that it was time to retire. And so I was very grateful to have the opportunity to purchase the shares and assets of Cornish Premier Pasties Limited, operated as a separate legal company, but 100% owned by Prima Bakeries.
Wow, that is such a great story in itself there, in regards to about, pasties, especially in Cornwall. I mean, there's so many pasty companies, but one of the things I want to ask you in regards to the growth of the company, what happened with COVID-19? What was your biggest impact from COVID-19 itself?
Well, we were one of the few companies, partly by luck and partly by design, that actually, inverted commas, benefited from COVID. And what I mean by that is that we saw no sales drop. In fact, our sales went up, our profit went up. We did not furlough any staff. We didn't make any staff redundant, and we stayed open throughout all of the lockdowns. I took very seriously our responsibility as a provider of food. For example, we supply the hospitals that, let's just say there was an option to obviously shut the doors, go on holiday, and wait for things to get better. We didn't want to do that. We worked all the way through it. As a result of some things that we put in place, a number of things, we actually grew sales and profit, and we took on extra staff during COVID. And also, not just that, the growth of Prima allowed me to purchase Cornish Premier Pasties in December 20. And so if you remember December 20, whilst the main lockdowns were still over, we still then went back into lockdown in January 21 through to April 21. So it was quite a testing and trying time to be thinking about, one, protecting and looking after your existing business, and two, effectively buying another business which was at that time 30% bigger on turnover than the company that was buying it.
Wow, 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 wow. And I guess with that being said there, what would you say right now, what has been some of your major challenges? You know, you talk about growth. So what has been your major challenges for you as a business leader here in Cornwall?
Well, I mean, it used to be COVID. Certainly, for example, last July when we were having in Cornwall's probably due to staycations, probably busiest season ever. We had COVID go through the factory and we lost 10 days of production, which, you know, cost me $250,000 pasties. Now we were then playing catch up ever since. That was COVID. COVID is distant memory now. Obviously, we still occasionally get the odd member of staff who's poorly away with it, but by now it's all of the world events that we're all facing. So it's Mr. Putin's mad invasion of Ukraine and its effect on inflation, energy costs in particular, food costs in particular, and that combined with some of the other issues that that most Western European economies are struggling with, in particular around labour and staff availability. COVID was seismic in its change or its effect on people's attitudes to work, some people's attitudes to work. Ever since then, you know, we found it very difficult to, along with other employers, to actually find the right number of staff and the staff that want to come and do a 40-hour week and for a fair day's pay sort of thing.
That's right. That's right. And with that being said, you know, I think COVID's affected everybody, you know, and no matter what industry you're in, you know, no one's immune to, like you said, the seismic shift in COVID and having business leaders to think differently about their business. So question I'll ask you is, what would you say is your biggest learnings so far as being a business leader?
I think you learn every day, literally every day. I think the key thing that I would say is that I learn from all sources. So I learn from my staff, I learn from my managers, I learn from my competitors, and I learn from the market. I think the biggest reason we've been successful with COVID and ever since is that we are able to take all of those stakeholders, if you like, their opinions and views and information, and in particular to use data. I was always told early in my career that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And one of the very key things that we've got in place, which certainly I didn't see as a business advisor with companies considerably bigger than me, is an incredible amount of data, so that I know, even if I'm not in the office, wherever I am, I know exactly what's going on and therefore can react. And as a family business, I don't have a board of directors. You know, it's myself and my wife who own the company, and ultimately I live and die by the mistakes that I make, or the decisions that I make. Fortunately, the ones we made in COVID, during COVID, were very successful and allowed us to prosper and to keep all of our staff employed and to keep feeding Cornwall.
Come on, that's good. Well, let me ask you this there, Mark. If you had to start your business over again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? I think I would probably just do the same things, but just a bit quicker.
Okay.
And I would probably make sure that, and it's always difficult when you're starting out business, that I had more financial resources available to me. I was undercapitalized from the beginning of the purchase of the first business, as a result of we were selling our business property in France, and there was a delay. We lived in France for 10 years, where we ran a Holdy Cottage business. The idea was to sell that business, use the equity to give me finance for the new business. Ultimately, we struggled to sell it, and I was able, luckily, in 2010, when we were still talking about recession, to borrow 100% of the purchase price, which is quite good going. But it did leave me short on working capital, and as you know, as you realised, when to get real growth out of the business, working capital is an essential part of it. So I think if I had my time again, and if there was the availability of it, is to have, you know, more finance available so that I could have achieved the growth that I have achieved on a quicker basis.
Yeah, I get that. And what would you say, what advice would you give, say, to an 8-year-old who wanted to start their own business?
I think go for it. Running your own business, I've often said it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. When it's good, there is nothing better, and certainly I could never work for anybody else now. But when it's bad, it really is awful, because you're on your own. And so to an 8-year-old, yeah, think about your customers. I think people overcomplicate business. Business is extremely complicated, but when you boil it down, it's very, very simple. How much does it cost you to make a product or provide a service? How much can you sell it for? And is there a nice sufficient margin that's sustainable in between the two? And that's all business is. Everything else is periphery. When I was out as a business advisor, I saw so many people get excited about something that they were interested in, which is great. I love the passion, but if the numbers don't work, nothing works. So as I'd say to the 8-year-old, the thing I said earlier on, that in order to manage it, you need to measure it. So understand what your KPIs are, understand what things are life and death in your particular business, in your particular industry, and really focus on them. But provide a absolutely fantastic customer service with a good product or service, and you'll be successful.
That's good. And I hear the passion, from you, and your voice, and just looking at you, and you just explaining about your business and what you've done, what you achieved. And lastly, I was going to ask you, what is inspiring you today?
What does inspire me today? Being successful. I love the buzz of being successful. I love the buzz of working with a really great team of people, and seeing their enjoyment at making our customers happy. It sounds a bit of a cliche, but if we don't make our customers happy, then no one's happy. And so the buzz is just continued success. It's having the self-respect to know that what I've got in place now has been created by me and my team, and that I'm responsible now for 150 people and their families, and the importance of putting food on their table, and doing my little bit for making sure that Cornwall has really great Cornish pasties to eat.
Come on, that's great. Well, I think that's end of the interview. Thank you so much, Mark, for just sharing heart and just your passion, and as well as your takings and your experience. And I'm sure everyone's going to benefit from that who listens to this. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. It's good. It's always good to talk about your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing easier in the world than talking about your own business.